There is no more need for the contingency. The meeting is called to order. Special meeting of the panel on constitutional affairs. Well, I could understand it. It's towards the end of the year. It's tough to ask you to come to a meeting. Anyway, let's invite the deputations and officials into the room. There are 161 deputations and individuals who have signed up to come and give their views. The meeting will take us to 7:30 p.m. There are 6 sessions today. Well, there aren't as many deputations and individuals as last week, so for each session, perhaps the schedule would not be as tight. Good morning, deputations. This is a special meeting of the panel on constitutional affairs. It is on the consultation document on methods for selecting the chief executive in 2017 and for forming the Legislative Council in 2016. We are here to receive views from the public. In a moment, I will invite the individuals and deputations to give your views. You will each have 3 minutes. When you have all given your views, then I will open the floor to members for questions. And then I will invite the representative of the Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Bureau, Mr. Lau Kong-wah, the Undersecretary, to give a response. Each session will be about 1.5 hours. And when you give your views, you are not offered any protection under the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance. As you speak, please speak closer to the microphone, and then we could all hear you better. And if you couldn't hear us well, there is an earpiece there. Now, first of all, I would like to invite Mr. Choi Yu-chung to speak. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. The Democratic Party has submitted our submission on. We share the same ideas, the 3-track proposal advocated by the Alliance for True Democracy. That is nominations by political parties, the public, and the nominating committee. We believe multi-track approach for making nominations will allow the public to choose the CE they want. Of course, there must be one person, one vote after nominations are made to elect the chief executive. That is the fairest and the most democratic way. For LegCo, we've also proposed a universal suffrage approach. Half of the seats should be returned by a single person, single vote method. The other half of the seats should be returned by proportional representation with the whole territory as a single constituency. Now, in 2016, we will not have a full direct election, but at least 3/4 of the members ought to be returned by direct election for the council to be adequately representative. On the question of CE, last night the Democratic Party had discussion with the Chief Secretary for Administration and the Secretary. The government has cast out on a number of issues or proposals raised, like on nominations by political parties and public nominations. But I hope the government will understand this. A nomination by political parties is popularly adopted in many countries as a means to make nominations. Now, if a government is to have effective governance, it has to do with its relationship with the legislature. nominations by political parties would help to ensure the sustainability of the political system. It is also the most accountable approach. Now, if you say that because there is not a law on political parties in Hong Kong, so we cannot have nominations by the political parties, I wonder if the government is really that ignorant. In many other countries, heads of government or presidents are elected on the basis of nominations by political parties. For example, in the UK, the Parliament will elect the Prime Minister. In the United States, the President is elected by political parties, and in the United States there is not a law on political parties. Taiwan also, the President is elected by by the legislature. Again, they do not have a law on political parties, so this is certainly not a hurdle. And I hope the government will take a serious look into this issue. Lastly, I'd like to say this. The government stresses that this conversation is all about let's talk. There's room for discussion. But then the administration doesn't make clear its position on many issues. So it's just dragging its feet. It doesn't know how to react. It seems that it's at a loss as to what to do. So I hope the government will have the courage to come up with a proposal for discussion by the public. And at the end, the government should have regard to public opinion and come up with a proposal that is truly universal suffrage.
Mr. Chen Kok-him. Good morning. I represent the Hong Kong Shui Yen University. On behalf of our student union, I'd like to say that the government should really respond to the suggestion of a three-track nomination that is by political parties, civil nomination, and the nomination committee. Article 45 stipulated that we should have a nomination committee that is widely representative and also adopt democratic procedures. Mr. Tam, the secretary for said that the basic law doesn't mention nomination by organizations. The so-called civic nomination proposed by some members of the public does not satisfy the criteria of being widely representative. The most important thing is that every voter should have a vote, and I hope that we would see this in our this adopted in our election through universal suffrage. Though I think the government should not beat around the bush. So the government should tell us what are your thoughts about the procedure. For example, on January 1st, a referendum was held, and we indicated that we wanted an element of civic nomination, when there is universal suffrage. Next, Ms. Leung Wing Man. Thank you, Chairman. If one goes back to the consultation paper, I find out that the government always emphasized that the views put forward by the public should be compatible with the basic law and the views of the MPC. But the government in the consultation paper had repeatedly distorted the meaning of the basic law and the MPC, and quoted what the main officials have said. And it shows that the Asia government is trying to interpret law with a political objective and trying to make the law serve a political objective. That would be a hurdle to our political development and represent an erosion to the rule of law. I think the secretary in charge of the constitution are all administrative officers and barristers, and they're willing to give up their dignity and their principles and distorted the law, and I think they should be ashamed. The Civic Party already has submitted its position to this council, and I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight a few important points. First of all, the consultation paper has distorted what the MPC has said. The MPC, when it discussed the question of the election of C in 2017, the fourth point said that the nomination committee can make reference of Annex 1 of the Basic Law regarding the existing composition of the nomination committee. I think the key word here is may make reference of. Whether it's in accordance with the basic law or the literal interpretation is that you should make reference, but it's not really doesn't have a binding effect. On page 21, Annex 1, the paper quoted Mr. Chow Shao Yang, interpretation. And he said that the making reference is actually is legally binding. So even if making reference has a binding effect, but the MPC decision only said that we may make reference of, we didn't use the word ought or should. Which shows that the nomination committee does not really need to make reference of the existing composition of the nomination committee. And the government has actually interpreted the decision of the MPC and therefore imposed something that is not legally binding into the consultation. The consultation paper also quoted what the main officials have said unofficially. Mr. Chow Xiang-yang said on the 29th December 2007 he was attending a forum on political reform, and he said that the nomination committee when nominating the CE candidate, it should be in the form of an organizational nomination. Quoting what the official said in an official capacity is not appropriate. Mr. Choi Pang-fei, thank you. Chairman, I represent the Eastern Youth Association. We really, our association welcome the consultation. We hope that the community can narrow the differences, arrive at a consensus, so that we can all, look forward to the first election of CE by universal suffrage. China practices a unitary system of government. The basic law stipulated that there should be one country, two system. Hong Kong people, governing Hong Kong, and our political system should be compatible with the basic law and the relevant decisions of the MPCSC. In the consultation paper, in respect of the salient points, there we would like to make 4 points. First of all, regarding the number and the composition of the nomination committee, we believe that we should make reference of the composition of the existing election committee, and also we should maintain the proportion of the different sectors, and on that basis increase the number of the members to those sectors to make the committee more representative. Within our society, there is already a consensus that the CE election should be more widely representative. Our association therefore believes that the number of members of the nomination committee should be increased. There is also a suggestion in community that all popularly elected members should become members of the nomination committee, and we agree. This proposal can expand the electorate of the nomination committee so that all members of the public can indirectly nominate the CE candidate. That is, all members of the public can take part in the election of the members of the nomination committee. It would not drastically increase the electoral expenses, and therefore it's a feasible option. Thirdly, after the nomination committee, regarding the threshold for the nomination of CE candidate, we propose that we should lower the existing nomination threshold, and that it should only be 1/10 of the total number of members of the nomination committee, so that more members can contest the election, and they can ensure that the election will be competitive. Finally, in respect of the method of election for the universal suffrage to return to CE, we believe that a one-man, one-vote system is compatible with the general definition of universal suffrage both in Hong Kong and internationally. In summary, the contents of the consultation paper is comprehensive. It has actually covered all the issues of concern in the community. The consultation period is for 6 months, so the more members of the public will have a chance to express their views, and the government should have enough time to listen to different views and to ensure that the CE election in 2017 and the legislative election in 2026 can be conducted smoothly. Mr. Lam, Andy Lam. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I represent the North Point Residents Association. Our association believes that the CE election should be competitive. Regarding the number of candidates, I don't think there should be a small number. Otherwise, the election would not give us any choice. But in order to ensure that the competence of the candidate, the commitment by that candidate, and whether or not he has the support of the public, and whether or not he's also trusted by the central government. So in this election, again, there shouldn't be too many candidates. Otherwise, if there are too many candidates, then the whole election process will be made too complicated, and also it will be a drain on public resources. Regarding the number of candidates, there should be, say, for example, if you look at the United States, the serious candidates would come from the two political parties, the Republican and the Democratic parties. According to the Basic Law, during the election for the CE, the candidates should be nominated by a widely representative nomination committee. Our association believes that the nomination committee must have nominate a specific number of candidates. And thirdly, the nomination committee, how many CE candidates should the nomination committee nominate? I think the community more or less has a consensus that the number should range between 2 to 4. We believe that such a number is appropriate. Thank you. Mr. Lai Chi Sing. Good morning, members and members. My name is Lai Chi Sing. I'm speaking in my personal capacity in respect of the subject of universal suffrage. I'm a parent, and I'm also the general manager of a European logistics company. I'll be speaking in my capacity as a parent and also someone who wants to construct Hong Kong. Because of these two capacities, I welcome the implementation of universal suffrage, but on condition that we must comply with the basic law. Mr. Choi and Mr. Chen talk about civic nomination, and I believe that it's not compatible with the basic law, and I will not, talk about that any further. According to Chapter 5 of the Consultation paper, regarding the number and composition of the nomination committee, I agree that we should use the term make reference of. That is, the 4 sectors of the election committee should be the rule governing the structure of the nomination committee. I therefore disagree with Mr. Leung when she said that there is a distortion of that expression. The distortion of the meaning. Regarding the composition of 4 sectors, I think we can make some appropriate adjustments. The electorate for the nomination committee, and I agree with Mr. Choi from the East that we could make some appropriate changes. Personally, I suggest that the corporate vote should be changed to votes to be cast by directors. So if the total number were increased, but I think the proportion among the different sectors should remain the same. Given the limited time, I will only highlight a few important points. 5.053, the nomination committee, how many candidates should the nomination committee should nominate. Mr. Ng Hong Man made a proposal regarding the composition of the SAR government, and in that article he suggested there should be 3 to 5 candidates. Mr. Raymond Ho, Dr. Chou Wan-Hai also suggested that there should be 3 to 5 candidates. Personally, I think the number of candidates should not be fewer than 3, but we may not necessarily need to set a cap. If you have obtained more than 50% of the votes, that is 601, then you would already become a candidate. Also, I believe that during the constitution period, I think the various political parties can collect public opinion in all the 18 districts. I hope that our discussion throughout today will be based on facts and focus on the subject of universal suffrage. Ms. Maggie Chan. Chairman, I would like to make a proposal regarding, I believe all the people of Hong Kong would like to have the CE returned by universal suffrage. The election committee by 2017 will hand over the power to elect the CE to all the voters of Hong Kong on a one-man, one-person basis. Why can't we first start narrowing our differences and then we gradually will enhance the system? My proposal is that among the 4 sectors, we'll try our best to expand the electorate of those sectors, and so that we can arrive at a compromise. the 4 sectors should expand the electorate to 3.4 million. Our proposal suggests that the nomination committee membership should be increased from 1,200 to at least 1,500, but that number is negotiable. But I'm proposing 1,500 as the basis. For the 4 sectors, we increased the numbers, and the 300 newly added members, I call them the super voters. Among the 3.4 million voters, we will, draw lots, and we form people on the basis of 75 persons forming one group, and therefore the total number of for each sector will be increased from 300 to 375. This option is combination of the drawing of lots and election, and this model can actually go back to 508 BC, that is the democracy that was practiced by the city of Athens. We also propose that there should be no screening and there should be random drawing of lots, so that we can immediately expand the electorate base of the 4 sectors to 3.4 million. And drawing of lots means everyone will have an equal chance of being chosen. And the random drawing of lots will overcome differences in terms of age, class background, and so on, thus making the nomination committee widely representative. Regarding nomination through democratic process, each candidate should receive at least the endorsement of 150 members of the nomination committee. And also regarding the candidate, there should be 3, and they should obtain more than half of the members of the nominating committee's endorsement. Universal suffrage normally involve 2 candidates, and the successful candidate should obtain more than half of the total number of votes. Mr. Luk Chung Hong. Thank you, Chairman. I welcome the Constitution and Military Affairs and ASEAN government launching the Constitution. Like many people in Hong Kong, I hope that we can have universal suffrage for the CE and LegCo. The important principle of political development is the basic law. So if we deviate from the proposals in the basic law, no matter how noble or idealistic the aspirations, it would not be practical. In the end, we will be simply staying put. As a result, Hong Kong people come to Hong Kong, universal suffrage, all these are prescribed in the basic law. I agree with the principles outlined in the Constitution, where we should cater to the needs of different sectors that is conducive to the system of capitalism, and also, bearing in mind the circumstances of Hong Kong. Today, I'd like to focus on the subject of the nomination committee. The nomination committee represents the whole community. Whether or not it is widely representative and represent public opinion is crucial. First of all, I propose that all DC members should become ipso facto members of the nomination committee. District councillors represent public opinion. They have close connection with the general public, and they are in tune with public opinion. So this proposal would actually make it representative. And secondly, the corporate votes now at the moment should be expanded and converted into individual votes for members of the industry. For example, well-known people in a particular industry. At least we should, convert it into, votes by directors. We should also have new sectors, like sectors representing Chinese medicine, women, and so on. And for sectors which are too broadly defined, we should have a new definition. For example, sports, entertainment, and publication. We should also increase the representative of those representing the grassroots level. I also propose that we should adopt the system of proportional representation, so that the full list system, where the winner takes all, could be change, so that we can really, achieve the principle of balanced representation. I don't think the number of members of the four sectors should all must be equal. And in 2005, the government did propose an option that all four sectors should not have equal number of members. Finally, the method of nomination by the nomination committee. I think we need to further discuss this. And the political system, there is nothing that is final. In order that the political development be sustainable, I hope that the government will conduct a comprehensive review of the electoral system to ensure that it is actually in tune with the development of our community. Thank you, Mr. Fung Chi-Wood.
Thank you, Chairman, members. I have given my written submission to everyone. From 1991 to 95, I was a elected member of the LegCo, and I've been striving to promote democracy in Hong Kong. Let's talk and achieve. Are we really sincere in doing that? Now, why the consultation at this time, and why not do it earlier? Did we consult the Hong Kong public when we drew up the basic law? Of course, we know that when we want to do consultation, we want proposals to be accepted by the public. We want everyone to have rights, equal rights politically. But then the FC have low credibility, and then the basic law also stipulates that the FCs should be abolished ultimately. So my question for the FC members, when will we scrap the FC seats altogether? In 2017, we will have one person, one vote to return the CE by universal suffrage. And that is a reflection of equal political rights for everyone. Why one person, one vote? Of course, the CE so returned will get more accepted by the public. But the situation in Hong Kong is deteriorating in terms of press freedom, the issuing of free TV licenses, and single permit system, and so on. These are issues that we are facing, are having difficulties with. Now, democracy should never be given by the top to the people at the bottom. And those in power are always not willing to give up their power. And democracy should be something that we should fight hard for. For this public consultation, do we really want to return the power to the people? For true universal suffrage, we should have civic nomination, of course. Everyone has the right to vote, and everyone should have the right to stand for election and to nominate. But of course, those who don't have the strength will not be elected. So why are you so worried that everyone can get to be nominated? Now, Hong Kong is deteriorating. It's sinking. And we don't want to topple the government. Please go back and think about this. What kind of Hong Kong do we like to see Hong Kong? And how should Hong Kong develop? Please agree with me that we can save Hong Kong only through promoting democracy here. It is only with a credible government can Hong Kong be ruled in an effective manner. Next one, Mr. Fung Kim Tang, Chairman, members, good morning. I have 2 points to make. The first is Hong Kong is now having an equal system of equality, and we are having this public consultation, and this undersecretary and other government officials are here. And I'm sure that after discussions, the system that we are going to have will be accepted by the public. Now, 3 minutes is too short, and I can't give you all the details of my proposal. But I believe that after lengthy consultation and discussions involving everyone, we will be able to come up with a proposal acceptable to all. I As a citizen of Hong Kong, I support the government in coming up with a proposal acceptable to all. That's the first point. Second point, there are many controversies in Hong Kong, and some of the points, contentious points, are not included or written out in the Basic Law. I hope that we will discuss around stipulations in the Basic Law. People talk about civic nomination, political party nomination. These are not stated in the Basic Law, but whatever proposals we have to come up with, I hope that they will comply with the Basic Law. Thirdly, I hope that the one person, one vote right can really be materialized, and that can be implemented in 2017. Our political system is progressing and developing. And last time we had a very good opportunity to promote the development of our constitutional system, and because of the bundling of issues and political parties' tactics, we couldn't move forward at that time. So as an ordinary member of the public, I urge everyone, including the pan-democrats and the pro-establishment camp, please return to Hong Kong people the right to universal suffrage so that the democratic, our political system can move forward and we can have one person, one vote. Next one, Mr. Lam Man Fai. Thank you, Chairman. I speak in my personal capacity. I was once an ERPCO member, and I was the chairman of the first term of Wong Tai Sin DC. I've been supporting direct elections, and I participated in the direct elections in 1988 and also in 1995 in the ERPCO elections. And in 1998, also participated in the DC election of LeLegCo. Now, before the handover, I witnessed that the governor from the British government was here to govern us. Now, during the handover, the CPG said that we would be electing our own CE, and the power will be returned to Hong Kong people. Well, we were pleasantly surprised. So, the CPG could have sent a person to govern us, but then it is returning the power to Hong Kong people. Now, for the past decade, has the number of directly elected LegCo members increased? Yes. And in 2008, because of the bundling voting, the situation was in sort of remained in status quo. Now, I came up to the LegCo once, and I've strived for the progress of the system in 2012, and we succeeded. So the number of LegCo members has been increased from 60 to 17, so the people in the second ladder can really join the LegCo, including Mr. Wu Chi-wai. I mentioned his name then, and then today I'm going to name him again because of this opportunity. He could have, he did join the LegCo as a second ladder member. And the 2017 will be a very critical period for us. The public hope very much that we can have one person, one vote to elect our own CE. Now, if we have bundle election or bundle voting again, then we will miss the opportunity of electing our own CE. If that happens, we will be infuriated. So I want to tell you, no matter is the pan-democrats or the pro-establishment camp, well, Ms. Emily Lau belongs to the former and the chairman belongs to the latter. The 70 LegCo members here, if we can't endorse a proposal this time, you would have to be held accountable. I want to cast my own vote for selecting the CE. Well, what we want to see are results and not the process. Now, if you do anything to sort of occupy, like launching the Occupy Central movement, then that is not going to do any good. So we must move forward. We must act in accordance with the Basic Law. well, it will take, take 10 years to amend the basic law. So why don't we proceed with whatever we can do now? Let's expand, say, the nominating committee, including, say, every DC member. So all in all, we, members of the public, want to cast our vote to select the CE. Next one, Mr. Wu Xiuwei, the Vice Chairman of Hong Kong Federation of Education Workers can't be here, so I will speak on behalf of. We support consultation, but we are not satisfied with the consultation document. I think the government should clarify certain unclear points. What is a universal suffrage? A universal suffrage is giving the election right to everyone. Now, United States and the UK are democratic countries. How do they elect the president? Well, for the United States, they have a lengthy primary elections within the parties, and there is civil referendum. But then the electoral votes of the states will be the ones to decide on the president. As for France, they have the nominations by the people's representatives, and there are 2 rounds of voting. So I hope that the SARG can make it clear what are the diversified ways of doing it internationally. Don't tell us that there is only a single model. If that is the case, and United States, UK, and France will not be considered democratic nations. Why do we need the nominating committee? When the basic law was drawn up in 1999, it was said that the nominating committee should nominate candidates according to democratic procedures. Well, that was stated some 20 years ago. Why didn't the government make it clear? Well, it is letting the media trying to confuse the public. Well, the consultation document stated these points which are confusing, so I think the government is incumbent upon the government to make clarifications. We should also state that the basic law is a statutory law. Now, we know that under Article 45, the provision is very clear. Then Hong Kong practices common law, and the members of the public are trying to interpret the statute law casually. So if the government doesn't clarify this point, then it's not acceptable. Now, as for democratic development in Hong Kong, since the handover in 1997, there are 4 terms of the electoral and 4 terms of the CE. And we are getting more democratic day by day, and there is only once when we are not doing it democratically. So we should proceed with democratic development. Whether we can succeed in achieving universal suffrage in 2017 depends on whether the people can come to a consensus for any, say, political negotiations. And well, then if there is no mutual understanding, accommodation, then we will not succeed. So please learn from lessons in the past. Next one is Ms. Chun-I. I speak on my personal capacity. The present election committee is representative and comprises 4 sectors and 38 subsectors, and is widely representative. And the NPCSC decision in December 2007 said that the nominating committee should be modeled after the EC. So I think the existing composition of the EC should be maintained. And at the same time, perhaps we could ask the nominating committee to take the model of the 2007 election committee, which comprises 800 people. But if then we are going to change the ratio of the structure, then it will only arouse further controversies. So much for the deputation's presentations. Now I'll open the floor to questions by members. How many members? Emily Lau first. 5 minutes each, please. Good morning. Well, thank you very much, deputations, to come on a Saturday morning. We'll be here from 9 to 7:30, and we thank members of the public for giving their views. Now we are hearing a wide range of views here, and I hope that you would accept that universal suffrage will be competitive and people from different political affiliations can stand for election. And Mr. Lam Fai said and urged strongly that people should have the right to vote and that there should be true election. And I have this question for Xi'an University, Mr. Chan. Well, the society attaches importance to young people's views these days, and young people have a strong opposition to Mr. 689 C.Y. Leung. Now, a lot of people share Mr. Lam's views. Can I ask Mr. Chan what the university students' views are? Mr. Chan, please. We have a consensus in the student union. We believe that we should support the three-track nomination proposed by the Alliance for True Democracy, i.e. civic nomination, political party nomination, and nomination by the nominating committee. I think the government should take their discussions further and try to forge a consensus. Well, what kind of election model are we talking about? Is it a widely representative model? Is it done based on democratic procedures? Mr. Lam, I will give you time to speak. Mr. Lam, you were once a chairman of a DC and an elected member. Did you understand that members of the public just don't want merely the right to vote? They really want a competitive election. And when they get to vote, then people of different political convictions are candidates. Now, the CPG is trying to rule out the people who oppose the CPG. So do you think the electoral should support such a system? Mr. Lam, wow, I appreciate the opportunity to speak here. In the past, I was an ERPCO member in 1997, and the seat was sort of sent or dispatched to you, like Chris Patton. He was, he landed at the shore, and now a CPG promises to give you choices. Say, they give you an orange and a pineapple, an apple, and so on. But let's look at reality. In the Basic Law, it is written clearly that we should comply with the Basic Law when we start. It doesn't mean that it can't be changed, the Basic Law, but then we have only 3 years to change the Basic Law, then that won't be sufficient, so that won't do. Well, which clause in the Basic Law said that you wouldn't have the choice? So I am suggesting that we should sit down and discuss and see how the nominating committee should be composed and how it should be expanded so that there are more choices. Now, if the nominating committee is too small, then we will be presented, say, with too few choices. So let's sit down and discuss. Let's not go down the route of bundle election. Let's expand the choices. Say we have an apple, we have an orange, and we have a pineapple. And so I think it's better that way than being too ambitious and asking for too many choices. And ultimately, we would end nowhere. We would not have the right to select our CE. So why don't we just present you, say, 5 oranges and 6 oranges, and also maybe perhaps a pineapple. And the ultimate aim is that we do have the right to vote.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's ridiculous of Mr. Lam we're talking about electing chief executive, and he's talking about oranges and pineapples. Well, he's here to give his views. You don't need to use such descriptions. But I gave him 2 minutes, and he's talking about oranges, apples, whatever. But many people don't want to make choices like that. You don't even get it. I don't know how you became an elected member. But now we don't have a choice. There's just one. There's no choice. Last time there was Henry Tan, Albert Ho, and CY. At least they were free to choose. Next time, if there were 4 or 5 to choose from, it would be better than just one. Even last term there were 3, and I hope there will be more than 3. That's all. I think members ought to be accommodating. Even if there are different views, we should listen to them. Any other questions, please? No, then administration. Mr. Lau Kong-wah, Under Secretary, can you give an overall response? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for coming to the meeting. We have jotted down all the views expressed for our reference. Now, we are now in a consultation period, so our focus is on listening. In the community, there are different voices. It's only natural. But then just now, as I heard you speak, it's about discussion in relation to the basic law and the MPC SC interpretations and decisions. That's important. That should be the basis. And I've also heard some suggest that we should try to discuss it and come to some consensus. Again, that's the important way forward for us. Now, just now, some mentioned the C election in 2017 is a crucial election. True, because many in the community are looking forward to universal suffrage in the C election. Now, because this is such a crucial election, that's why during the consultation period, we are ready to listen to different voices on the basis of the basic law and the MPCSC interpretations and decisions. We see where there's room to narrow differences on that basis, and that's what we are doing exactly. Some mentioned the composition of the nominating committee. Quite a few actually mentioned that. In Article 45 of the Basic Law, it stated clearly the nomination procedure. That is, nominations are to be made by the nominating committee. That point is clear. Of course, on the composition of the nominating committee, some have expressed different views. Some asked how come there could be more diversity, and some have suggested including more sectors, including the numbers, increasing the numbers or expanding the electorate base. So we will listen to all suggestions. Now, you've given some suggestions today. If in future you have written representations, they will all be included in our report for reference by the public. Some asked about the way forward or the process. Our consultation period will take us to the 3rd of May, and many have sent in their written submissions, and today, of course, is a public hearing. And after the end of the consultation, it will take us about 2 months to collate the views. And that will be, of course, based on all the views expressed during the consultation period. And then we will prepare a report for submission to the Chief Executive. The Chief Executive would then submit the report to the MPC Standing Committee. That's the process. So we would have completed step 2 of the 5-step process. That is, after we submitted the MPCSC report, then we will work out a proposal. So at the end of the day, the government is to submit a proposal to LegCo for scrutiny, and then it will be for the LegCo to approve the proposal. We need 2/3 majority support from LegCo for the proposal to be approved. Yes, we've heard the views of some of you. By the time the proposal comes to LegCo, it would be great that if the proposal is considered acceptable, some use the term acceptable, that means it may not be the ideal proposal. Now, there were 2 previous rounds of consultation on constitution reform. One exercise was successful, the other was a failure. The key to success was that if there was a dialogue, then the chances of success were greater. But if there was polarization of views, then it's possible the exercise would fail. So we should learn from past experience. Now, we all consider this next round of election to be crucial. In fact, we've been in communication with different political parties. We get the sentiment that all would like to see universal suffrage being implemented. So that's why it's important that there is a consensus of sort. I hope interactions and communications will continue. And if I could respond to 2 other points. Consultation on the basic law. There was consultation on the basic law when it was being drafted. The drafting process took 4 years and 8 months. The other point, Article 45 of the basic law. Perhaps there's not enough publicity on this article. Just now, an individual read out the paragraph. That's actually in paragraph 2.2 of the consultation document. In any case, we have to go by Article 45 of the basic law and the relevant decisions of the MPCSC as we take forward the consultation, and we must keep publicizing the article and the documents and explaining things to members of the public. If you think of any ways we could do that better, please let us know. We'll be only too happy to listen to your suggestions. Anything else from the deputations and individuals? Reverend Fong Chi Wood. Public nomination, if I could respond to that. Yes, there was consultation on the basic law, true, but it did not take heed of public views then. It went against public views. And I hope this time round the consultation will take heed of public views and follow public views. Okay, we'll let the other 2 speak first before we invite the Undersecretary to respond. Next, Mr. Wu Xiu-wai. I fully agree to what the Undersecretary said. The government report has to be first endorsed by the MPC Standing Committee before it's put to a vote by LegCo. So that's the so-called second step of the 5-step process. So I think we have to see the reality of the 5-step process. If you do not go by the decision of the MPCSC, doesn't matter if there's strong public opinion, still it cannot be passed. And when Mr. Donald Tsang carried out the consultation on constitution reform, there was more than 50% support from the public, but still the proposal was voted down. Now we have to bear in mind Hong Kong is our home unless you think of immigrating, but this is where we live. So how do we live together in harmony? How could we ensure there is gradual and orderly progress, and there will be an increasing element of democracy in our elections term after term? Well, we know it will be difficult. 2 years later, in 2016, we're going to have the LegCo election, and maybe you're worried that whether you will still be a LegCo member in 2016 before the 2017 C election. But of course, some don't have to worry. Some will always be here because they always catch the limelight from the media, but others may not be so sure. Now, in 2015, can we endorse a proposal on C election in 2017 that, of course, has bearing on the survival of many political parties. Well, for officials, it doesn't matter to them actually. They're still doing a work, but for legislative members, they have to secure votes. I think we need to take a broader perspective. Don't just follow what's reported in the news, because the media have to report something new every day. But legislative members, you are the opinion leaders. Politics is your speciality. You should lead public opinions. You shouldn't let the media lead us. So when we talk about the constitutional system, we have to look at the legal basis. We also have to look at the experience in other countries, and we have to look at the NPCSC conditions, and then together we can talk things through. But even if we couldn't agree on everything, we should still try to endorse a proposal. Now, if we don't have direct election in 2070, I'm sure we'll have it in 2022. Even if the Occupy Central succeeded. Well, look at Bangkok. The capital was paralyzed. Were they able to scare Yingluck? No. So who are you trying to scare here? Who are you trying to threaten? Are you trying to scare CY Leung or Carrie Lam? Definitely won't go as far as Xi Jinping. Are you just scaring off people in Hong Kong, especially those working in Central? Because then maybe ambulances could pass through like what happened in New York. Mr. Choi Yu-cheong. Please all be brief. The Undersecretary talked about the time frame, but I think the more important time frame is that Hong Kong people have been waiting far too long. Some mentioned that before 1997 the governor was appointed to Hong Kong. As you know, before 1997, even people in Hong Kong wanted to have direct election as soon as possible. But at the time, Beijing and the leftist camp of in Hong Kong tried to stop direct election. Even for the 1988 direct election, the leftists came out to oppose it. Now, people in Hong Kong have been waiting and waiting all this time. They couldn't wait any longer. You still talk about gradual and orderly progress, let's get going first or whatever. But we are talking about true universal suffrage. That's what we need. I hope the SAO government would not misjudge public views. Beijing in particular must not misjudge the will of the people of Hong Kong. If this time round you're still dragging your feet and you are citing this excuse or that excuse and you're not giving Hong Kong people true choices, there is no true universal suffrage, then, like you, Undersecretary, your former chairman of your political party, like Jasper Zhang, what will happen is that it will be hard to rule in Hong Kong. So this is something you have to see, and that's why we want the government to respond to that. Perhaps the Chief Secretary has already said so a bit. That is, if there is no true universal suffrage for the people of Hong Kong, is the SL government well aware of the fact that it will be hard to govern? Have you reflected a view to Beijing so that there will be true universal suffrage for the people of Hong Kong? Ms. Chen, thank you. If I may share with you my views on nominating committee, that is, the composition of the nominating committee could be based on the composition for the election committee, while some disagreed with that point. But we shouldn't just look at that sentence in isolation. I would like to share some legal views with you. Article 45, we have to read the article as a whole. Second paragraph of Article 45. The method for selecting the Chief Executive shall be specified in the light of the actual situation in the Hong Kong SAR and in accordance with the principle of gradual and orderly progress. The ultimate aim is for nomination by a broadly representative nominating committee, so we have to read it as a whole. And the other reference we must make is the 1990 NPCSC decisions. In accordance with Article 31 of the PRC Constitution, the SAR should have regard to the actual situation, and then the NPCSC will make decisions in accordance with the law. And then in the 4th of April 1990 NPCSC decision, there is the golden ratio of 20%. Now, those are the laws. And I've also told you what actually happened, the facts. First we had the selection committee. Now we have 400 members, and then we have the election committee to 1,200 members. The evolution is on the basis of Article 45. So there's been regard to the facts, the history, and the law. That's why by saying that we could make reference actually means we must make reference to that. Mr. Choi, Mr. Wu talked about other countries, the UK, the US, Taiwan. Well, when we do a project, of course, we will make reference to other practices. But then references could not be used as methodologies. Here we are talking about one country, two systems, and elections under that system. So if you take reference, you have to consider whether it's appropriate, and I think it's not appropriate. And it doesn't suit our case. That's why there's no need to consider it. We should have our own basic law, and we should go by our basic law. Second point, Mr. Reverend Fung mentioned a point. Now, my view is that everyone could run for the CE post. If we are concerned that the threshold is too high, well, I think we could bear in mind that we should allow everyone a chance to run. But it's about the transition of the nominating committee. Let's say if the chief executive is to report duty to Beijing, he doesn't even have a home entry permit, of course it's not going to work. Mr. Lam said when there's no one person, one vote, then all political parties have to be blamed. But I don't think we should take this prejudicial view. We have to see what went wrong where. We have to look at it in a rational manner. Occupy Central, I think we should oppose it. We do want to have universal suffrage. Thank you. Mr. Lau and the Secretary. The deputation individuals have supplemented their views. Could you respond again, please? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, all of you, for your invaluable comments. Reverend Fung mentioned public nomination. Reverend Fung, if you have a complete proposal to submit, certainly we will look at it. The drafting of basic law at the time was drafted, yes, there was consultation. When the consultation was basic law was endorsed, the majority of the public supported the endorsement of the basic law. Mr. Wu Xiuwei talked about the five-step process. It is our wish, and I hope that we could complete the five-step process. But let's say at step 3 or any other step, the process is halted, then I think the public will find that a great pity. Mr. Wu put much emphasis on the legal basis. Yes, personally I think it's important. But then at the same time, public opinions are also important. In our consideration, apart from the legal basis, we always stress the political basis, which is also very important. Political basis may include public opinions, whether the proposal has a chance to be passed in electrical, and the endorsement of the CPG. So we have to look at all these political angles. And they are important too in this constitutional reform process. That's exactly why this is going to be tough. Mr. Choi referred to some difficulties and the meaning of universal suffrage. Yes, I fully appreciate it. I think we all subscribe to the meaning of universal suffrage. You asked us to pass on your views or the views of the Democratic Party. Definitely, we will faithfully reflect the views. Yesterday, we visited your party. There was a candidate exchange. I think that was important too. And I found the exchange most useful. Now, it's useful not because on how much common ground we have, but rather that we're able to see our differences clearly. Then we could all ponder how we could narrow the differences. Now, if we agree on everything, there would have been no need for the discussion. But exactly because there are differences, that's why we have to see how we could agree to disagree on certain points. That, well, it's a test of wisdom on all of us, including the government. And so that's why I would like to see more communication. Mr. Lai made another point. Yes, we need to talk about the legal basis, and we are to achieve universal suffrage. Of course, we have to look at the actual situation in Hong Kong and past experiences. We have to understand that Hong Kong is a SAR region under one country, and here we're talking about the election of the head of the SAR. Maybe in other places the system is not exactly the same, but what we share in terms of similarity is that there will be one person, one vote to choose our head. And we look forward to that. Okay, thank you very much. That's the end of this session. We will now move on to the second session.
First of all, I'd like to welcome all the deputations and individuals attending the special meeting of the CA panel. Today, we're here to discuss the consultation paper regarding the 2016 legislative election and the formation and the CA election in 2017. I will invite each of the deputations and individuals to express your views. When you speak, please do not go beyond 3 minutes. The bell will ring after 3 minutes, and I hope by then you will finish your speech. If you have any written information for us, you're welcome to submit them. After you have spoken, I'll ask whether members have any questions for you. Following that, I will ask Ms. Lau Kong Wah, the Undersecretary, to give a global response. All right. I'd also like to add that your speeches and comments will not be covered by the Electrical's Powers and Privileges Ordinance. When you speak, please speak closely to the microphone. If you cannot hear us too clearly, please put on the earpiece. All right, to start, I'd like to invite Mr. Wing Kwok. Good morning. I speak in my personal capacity and want to speak on the subject of political reform. The legal basis for the return of the election of CE is based on the Basic Law and the decisions of the MPAC-SC. Without Basic Law, there won't be any universal suffrage in Hong Kong. To implement universal suffrage, we have to follow the decisions of the MPAC-SC and the Basic Law. That is the premise, and if we deviate from basic law and come up with a different model, we'll never arrive at the destination of universal suffrage. It also deviates from the rule of law and our core values. So to insist that the nomination committee of the nomination committee to elect the CE and that it should be widely representative and represent the overall interest of Hong Kong. So those are my views on political reform. Next, Mr. Chairman Yee. Thank you. I represent the Hong Kong Muay Thai Association. I think the Hong Kong SL government is set up according to the basic law promulgated by the CPG. Our political reform and structures is based on the basic law. Same for political development. Right now in Hong Kong, there are some people who make proposals for political reform which ignores the basic law, and I think this is very dangerous. Once we agree with these approach, it would mean that Hong Kong will universally destroy the implementation of the basic law and rendering Hong Kong ungovernable. Hong Kong all along has enjoyed a high level of autonomy and freedom and democracy. So I think everything we do, we should fully comply with the basic law. The return of the CE in the 2017 election should go through the nomination by the nomination committee, and then the candidates will be voted on a one-person, one-vote basis to be returned to office. I think Hong Kong should now focus on discussion on the method of forming the nomination committee and the method of nominating the CE candidates. The nomination committee should be widely representative. It should also provide for balanced representation from all sectors. Right now, the election committee comprises electorates from 4 major sectors, and they are already widely representative and achieve the purpose of balanced representation. The 2017 C election, the candidate will be nominated by the nomination committee and voted by all voters in Hong Kong on a one-person, one-vote basis. I think we should set a ceiling on the number of nominations to ensure that we will have a genuinely competitive CE election. So long as it is widely representative, I think we should have 2 to 4 candidates. Finally, I hope all the political parties will put aside their differences. This is because in 2017 we're taking the first step towards universal suffrage, and this is very important. Otherwise, if we only hold on to our own positions, then democratic election will simply we will be stuck and will not be able to move forward to the detriment of our future generation. Next, Mr. Lee Tong Kwong. I represent the Kowloon East Children Association Limited. Like the other 2 gentlemen, I think that any discussion and the framework of discussion should follow the basic law. Once we go beyond the framework of the law, then we will not agree, because Hong Kong is a place where we practice the rule of law. In Chapter 3, 3.11 of the Constitution paper regarding the number and the composition of the nomination committee, I think the nomination committee now should be expanded. It should be more representative of public opinion. At the moment, the popularly elected district councillors have over the years obtained a solid public support. So should we consider adding the popularly elected district councillors into the nomination committee? In paragraph 3.11 of the Constitution paper, reference is made to the composition of the nomination committee. For the 3rd sector, I can see that there are many subsectors. Within the 3rd sector, you have labor, social service, and religion. Apparently, we are missing out the so-called district associations. For example, the Kowloon East Children Association, we are a community organization and also a clansman association. According to official statistics, we have 1.2 million people belong to the Chow Chow clan. And other than the labor and the welfare sectors or subsectors, I think the voice of the clansman association like ours is not represented in the council. So we hope that all these groups and associations could also be represented on the nomination committee. Regarding the arrangement for the CE election, I think that we should increase the number of the number of members of the nomination committee from ideally if we include all the popularly elected district councillors. On the nomination of the CE, I think we need to deal with it carefully. If the present CE, in case is not nominated, if the successful candidate is not nominated by, endorsed by the CPG, what's going to happen? We may need to enact a piece of legislation or amend the legislation. Otherwise, that scenario will, should it happen, would be embarrassing. And later on the subject of the electorate for the electoral election, I think we should expand the electorate for the functional constituencies. I also like to declare that in 2002, I was the former chairman of the Life Insurance Agents Association. And later on, I'd like to tell you about how we should expand the electorate of our voters. Mr. Lee Kin Heng, thank you. I note that the government has now started the consultation on political reform, and the different secretaries and have gone to the community to lead the consultation. While they work very hard, but I don't think they have done a good job. And today we're here to make 3 points. First of all, in the public consultation, I think we should really spell out more clearly about the differences in in the area of law and politics. The chairman of the Bar Association said there are 2 issues that cannot be confused. That is, a political issue should be, discussed publicly and openly, and Mr. Tam said agreed. So what are the legal questions and what are the political questions? In the political constitutional process, I think the government to clarify this further. According to my understanding, legal issues, by legal issues, we're talking about the basic law and the decision of the NPC Standing Committee. For political issues, the political issue is about what Li Fei and Chow Xiaoyang said, and the requirements they suggested, that the CE candidate CE should love Hong Kong and love the country and not go against the CPG. Whether or not this is pleasing to our ears, there's something that we need to clarify. Secondly, we need to ask whether or not all the voters should have the same right to nominate a CE candidate. In many democratic countries in the West, we think that they are democratic countries, but that's not. But the reality is not like that. The candidate must win in an election within the parliament, and they will then win within their own party, and there would be a primary election. Why do we accept such a system, whereas in Hong Kong, the 3.2 million voters can have the same right to nominate candidates? Does it mean that in the future, a nomination committee, I don't know whether it's going to be 1,200 or 2,400 members, can we increase the legitimacy of the nomination committee? How are we going to deal with the corporate votes and votes by organizations? How can we improve on the legitimacy of the nomination committee? My third suggestion is that I hope in the course of the consultation, the government can remind the people of Hong Kong of this. That is, what sort of outcome do we want to achieve? Do we want to stay put, or do you want to elect our chief executive on a one-man, one-vote basis? Next, Madam Mancy Wing. Good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to make my comments on the election we see in 2017. To maintain social stability and prosperity, the government and the public would need to work together. I don't see any reason why our government and the CPG should see anything wrong in Hong Kong. I think we should not insist on our personal opinion and disregard the decision of the MPCSC. I have 4 suggestions. Article 158 of the Basic Law already explains that the power rests with the MPCSC, and the MPCSC gives the people of Hong Kong the right for Hong Kong people to come to Hong Kong. The MPCSC also decided that the CE election in 2017 should be based on the model of one man, one vote. For the CE to be widely representative and has a general mandate, I think the government should consider increasing the number of members for the different sectors in the nomination committee so that the representatives for those sectors can participate in the nomination process. And we can consider setting a threshold of 20% of the endorsement by of the votes of the nomination committee before a candidate can stand for election. In order that Hong Kong can stay prosperous and stable, and the government should adopt a pragmatic and open attitude to listen to public opinion. The public should also express their views in a law-abiding manner so that we can have a successful 2017 election. This is not the final destination, and it's not the case that policy cannot be changed, especially at this age of rapid changes. So long as we work together and treat this as something that affects everyone in the family, we can arrive at a consensus. Finally, I hope the government can expand the number of places in our universities so that our next generation can better equip themselves and contribute to our society. Next, Mr. Loh Ka Yu. Good morning. I think for the legislative election in 2016, there are two aspects that we need to consider. First of all, the question of representativeness, and secondly, the question of fairness. Other than reflecting our opinion, we can also accommodate the views of different people so that the views of the different sectors will be considered. I think we also need to make the FCs more representative. We should expand the electorate, and the government should not set too high a threshold for the FC electorate so that practitioners in those industries are excluded from taking part in the election. On the subject of fairness, I think the government should review the method of registering voters for the different FCs so that there will not be too much discrepancy among the different sectors. Also, within the same sector, the qualification for the voters for the different subsectors also vary a lot. With public participation, I think for the registration of voters and the qualification of the eligibility of the voters, the different method of treating different subsectors should be considered so that we can ensure there will be equal rights of participation. I also believe that the 2017 CE election is going to be a turning point. We can make timely reviews, and the CE returned by popular election should be voted by a representative nominating committee. The electoral represents public opinion, and I don't think we should easily change the rule of the game for the sake of public livelihood, and I don't think political reform should stay put. We should review our relevant system so that we can remain prosperous and stable. Mr. Low Kam Wing. First of all, I'd like to make a comment regarding the 2017 election, CE election. I think we should, on the premise of complying with the law, we should consider two principles. First of all, we should follow the requirements in the Basic Law. The Basic Law states that the Hong Kong SAR should implement different systems, including the method of returning the CE and forming the electoral. So the Basic Law is a very important legal foundation. Secondly, we have to follow the decisions of and interpretations of the MPC Standing Committee. We all know that the political reform proposal and the method of electing the CE will need the endorsement of the MPCNC. If our proposal deviates too much from the MPCSC decision, how can it be endorsed? And therefore, I think the CE election in 2017 should satisfy the requirements of the Basic Law and the decision of the MPCSC, so that we can avoid unnecessary arguments and that our discussion will be more focused. According to the 2007 MPCSC decision, the method of electing the CE by universal suffrage means that we should set up a widely representative nomination committee. I suggest that the nomination committee can actually migrate directly from the previous election committee to become the nomination committee, and the number of members could be increased. I hope that we can retain the same 4 sectors. The nomination committee will follow democratic procedures to nominate the CE candidates. Regarding the number of candidates, I believe there should be a limit. If there are too many candidates, at the time of the election, each candidate will obtain a very small number of votes, and the successful candidate will not have a high degree of legitimacy. Finally, I believe that we all want to cast our votes to elect our CE in 2017. Universal suffrage is actually our aspiration. Thank you very much. Mr. Wong Kun Lun.
Good morning. I would like to talk about the 2017 election for the CE and the 2016 election for the Legislative. There have been much discussions in the community, and people aspire for universal suffrage as soon as possible. But then in the society, that there are suggestions that there should be other options other than that provided for in the Basic Law. But my personal opinion is that the Basic Law should serve as a guiding principle for universal suffrage. Now, some people believe that under this legal framework, we should map out the details. But then some people that we should do away with the Basic Law, and I think that is questionable and problematic. On specific points about CE election, there are issues related to the nominating committee, the nomination procedures, 1 person, 1 vote, and so on. Based on equal and universal participation principle, I hope that everyone can directly participate in the elections. In 2002 and 23 district forums on elections, I have also raised suggestions that we should increase the number of members in the nominating committee. I suggest that under the framework of the Basic Law, we should increase the number of people in the nominating committee. And we want to raise the mandate of the nominating committee among the public. The election committee now both nominates and elects the CE, but then I hope that the nominating committee will merely nominate candidates, and all registered or eligible voters can have the right to vote. As for the procedure for election, I think the controversy now focuses on the threshold, whether there will be a screening system. And the nominating committee should represent various sectors, and it is a sort of indirect election, and it does have a legal basis. So I believe that the process should be made more transparent, and then the public would rest assured that this is a fair procedure. I have given you a submission, so you can refer to it. Mr. Yong Muk Chi next. Chairman, good morning. I want to share my views here. I was born and bred in Hong Kong. I studied university overseas, and I've worked for some time overseas. And I chose finally to return to Hong Kong to work and live. Many professionals share a background similar to mine. So I think my personal future is closely related to the future of Hong Kong. So I hope that in the constitutional reform we can seek to narrow down the difference and forge a consensus. I'm from the middle class, and I think we should take a gradual and orderly approach in our constitutional reform, and we should not try to arouse any upheavals in the society. And if it is going to undermine the very sound economic base of Hong Kong, then that is so very regrettable. I suggest that the nomination method should be based on the basic law, and that there should be a widely representative nominating committee. The number of candidates should be around 3, to ensure that our resources can be best utilized. Now, as for the number in the nominating committee, that can be changed depending on Hong Kong's actual situation. I want to reiterate that Hong Kong's success doesn't come easily, and the political reform should provide a solid foundation for various industries to develop steadily, and everybody can be self-reliant and lead a better life. So that should be the overall direction. So any options which go against that desire or ideal is like putting the cart before the horse. Now, I don't speak on behalf of everyone, but I think I do share the views of many of my friends, and we work hard at the middle class, and we have tried to contribute to the society. Dr. Pearl Chan, thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words. I hope that the election committee can continue to exist, and it comprises elites from different sectors, and the representatives are very familiar with the working of their respective sectors, and we can and they can take into account the overall interest of Hong Kong. They play an important role here, so we should not be disbanding it. Now, as for the CE election, the first prerequisite is that the CE candidate must love the country and Hong Kong, and I think that's very natural, because for every industry, or even in a home setting, the employee is required to be loyal and diligent and committed, and should put the interest of the employer in the first place. So for a CE who governs a place with 7 million population, he should love Hong Kong, or else he would not be coming up with policies to the benefit of Hong Kong. And he should work for the best interest of Hong Kong, so that Hong Kong people can live and work happily here, and our economy can prosper and be praised by nations worldwide. He should love the country, and he should swear allegiance to the nation, and he should not argue with the nation. This is something that is a necessity. Hong Kong people aspire for advanced democratic countries worldwide, but we must first understand when the election systems in these countries started, what kind of path have they treaded to achieve the success today. Now, in the U.S., the country was established in 1776. There was it upholds human rights. In 1920, people could vote. Now, non-United U.S. Citizens had the right to vote. In 1948, the women gained the right to vote. In the UK, the election system was rather sort of narrow. Only those who have land rights had the right to vote. And in 1869, the women had successfully strived for the right to elect. And actually, they gained such a right in 1928, and in 2008, then men and women were made equal. Next one, Mr. Chow Kwok Kang. Thank you, Chairman. Honorable members, good morning. I want to give comments on constitutional reform. I've never thought about doing so. I'm a member of the Hong Kong Hiking Association China. As members of the public, we didn't want to get involved in politics, and we want Hong Kong to remain prosperous and stable. I live in the New Territories. Early on one fine morning, there was flag selling. I saw this lady bringing her son to sell flags. And then I stopped in front of a zebra crossing, and I turned back, and I actually noted that this lady was carrying on her back a baby. And I thought to myself, what do Hong Kong people want? Why are we still staying in this place? I was born and bred in Hong Kong. We want a stable society. We want to work and live happily here. And we are so frightened and disgusted with all the persistent debates and arguments going on. We want the CE to be elected smoothly. So for the two elections in 2017 and 2016, we should follow the basic law and the decisions of the MPCSC, and that will ensure smooth transition. We do have public opinion. We do have to consider the silent majority in considering public opinion. The silent majority hope that we can live our life in a stable society, and I hope that our honorable members, those who have the opportunity to speak here, please serve our society based on your own moral beliefs. We believe that we should start doing the right things at home before we take it to the society and the nation as a whole. I hope that our legislative members can lead us effectively and give us hope, and we believe that you will do so. Thank you. Next one, Mr. Wong Ting Chung. Chairman, members, good morning. As we all know, the basis for CE election by universal suffrage is the basic law and the relevant decisions of the MPCSC. Now, without the basic law, there will not be universal suffrage for Hong Kong. I agree with this gentleman who just spoke. I agree with everything he said. Hong Kong is very free and very democratic already. And then some people, based on their own interest, or they are sort of affected by Western thinking, try to damage Hong Kong's stability and economic development continuously. I think Hong Kong people are smart, and they do realize who are the people who are helping Hong Kong, who are doing damage to the society. I'm sure that Hong Kong people are smart enough to make that distinction. Now, for universal suffrage, for CE, that should be a screening, and we should go by the simple majority rule. Second, the number of candidates should not be too big. 2 to 3 are just about right. And I hope that you would listen more to the public's views. And I hope that in 2017, we have universal suffrage and one man, one vote. Next, Mr. Law Kwan. Thank you, Chairman. For the CE election in 2017 and the formation of electoral in 2016, we must follow the basic law and the decisions of the MPCSC. And we should discuss the issue in a pragmatic and realistic approach, and we should adopt a gradual and orderly progress. Now, I have the following points to make. Article 45 stipulates that the nominating committee should be formed in accordance with Annex 1 and 2 of the Basic Law. So the nominating committee does have a legal basis and a constitutional foundation. So the three-track approach, especially the civic nomination approach, doesn't have any legal basis. The proposal to ask the nominating committee to endorse nominations by the political parties and civic nomination is not right, doesn't have any legal basis. If we proceed with civil nomination, it will cause chaos, and the public should have to show the responsibility. I think we should maintain the four-sector composition at the election committee, and that should be a model for the nomination committee. And the number of each sector should be more or less the same, and then minor adjustments can be made. For example, the corporate vote can be changed to the individual and the director's vote, and to ensure that there is equal voting right. Now, as for the number of candidates, I think there should be no more than three candidates, so as to make the election competitive and to be able to cover a wide spectrum of the political spectrum. We also have to consider the basic law and the political realities, and we try to forge consensus within the existing legal framework to achieve universal suffrage for returning CE in 2017. Mr. Yip Mem Pan, I want to state my stance first. I hope that our discussions can center around Article 45 of the Basic Law and also the decision of the MPCSC in 2007. For the nominating committee, I hope that the four sectors should be maintained. The number should be more or less the same. As to the composition of the sector, we still can discuss that. We still have time. Now, as for the electoral base of the nominating committee, I think we do have the room for expansion. The corporate vote can be turned into individual votes. Now, as for the number of candidates, there should be no more than 3. So last time we did have 3. We can expand that number. I also hope that the candidates should have the support of at least half of the nominating members of the nominating committee. We should have a one-person, one-vote system. That is a consensus of Hong Kong people. Now, as for the four sectors, why this proposal? I hope you understand that Hong Kong is a multi or diversified society. We want to take heed of the interest of every stratum of the society, and that is also in line with the development of the capitalist economy in Hong Kong. And this is precisely the reason why the Basic Law was drafted in the way it is concerning political system. So this is a point that we should hold strictly onto. Now, as for the universal suffrage for CE, if it can't reflect the opinions of the different strata of the society, then the Hong Kong's capitalist economy will be undermined. So that's my main reason. Some commentators said that for the fourth sector, can we increase the number of elected or district council members? Now, district councillors are more focused on local or district issues. If you're going to add the number, then that would not be fair to the other sectors. So I don't want to be sort of biased towards a certain sector among the four sectors. Now, as for women and youth, they are not represented. I am a young person myself, and I hope that the government consider taking care of the needs of the young people. the number of candidates not fewer than 3, but then it would not be good if it is too many. Now, for local elections, we see public forums being held. Now, because there are too many candidates, it would be difficult for us to understand their election platforms. Next one, Mr. Chair Long. I represent the Federation of Hong Kong Guangdong Community Organizations. First, if we are to return the CE by universal suffrage, we must be sure about his legal or constitutional status. Hong Kong is a special administrative region of the of China. Hong Kong is just a local government. How can we avoid electing a CE who is going to oppose the CPG? That should be a focus of the constitutional reform. We should prevent them at a systemic level. If not, then everything we do will be to no avail. We'll say fail in the middle, the third step in the 5-step process. We should follow the basic law and the decisions of the MPC SC in forming any future systems. This is the first point that we should be very sure about. Second, nominating committee. That is to be formed for electing the CE. Well, this is not so much a matter for Hong Kong people. The CE represents the CPG to govern Hong Kong. He should be accountable to the CPG and also the Hong Kong public, both sides. So he must report duty annually at the CPG. So the nominating committee should be sort of viewed in accordance with the interpretation of MPC SC, i.e., following the remarks made by the relevant officials. The nominating committee should also be broadly representative, and it should also take reference from the model of the election committee, which comprises 1,200 members. We can add in some sort of democratic elements to that committee that we can further discuss, and we can present proposals which are in line with the basic law to expand the electorate base of that committee. Now, if the nominating committee has been formed, the nominations should be made as a whole and not by individual member of that committee. So they should sort of reflect this collective spirit. Some people suggest that the nomination should be made by over half of the members of the NC. That can be considered. Or we can consider the option that all members of the nominating committee should make the nomination.
Mr. Chen Yin-hon, thank you. I'm from the supporters of civic passion education. In the last public hearing, some asked the 3 members of the task force to go to hell. But what I see is that these 3-member task force is going to send Hong Kong people to hell. Now, if we want to have true universal suffrage, we must first delete the term organizational nomination. Last week, Raymond Tam, the Secretary for Constitution and Mainland Affairs, said that the organizational nomination was not within the framework of the basic law, just that someone called Chao Xiaoyang said so. It's become a provision of basic law, so that's misleading to the people of Hong Kong, as if it's actually a requirement in the basic law. Now, since nomination is a matter of great concern to the people of Hong Kong and the consultation is misleading, I think we shouldn't take another wrong step. I think we should withdraw the whole consultation document. We should start afresh with a new round of consultation. We mustn't make many more mistakes. And when Raymond Fong was interviewed, he mentioned time and again that we cannot undermine the substantive powers of the nominating committee in making nominations. That's another misleading statement. Even if in 2017 there's the nominating committee, public nomination could actually not undermine the substantive powers of the nominating committee to make nominations, because it will only undermine the powers of nominating committees to screen out candidates. Take, for example, let's say the nominating committee has nominated 2 loyalist candidates. Let's say the Albert Ho and Emily Lau. Now, nominating committee cannot kick out Emily Lau and Albert Ho, and public nomination could not stop the 2 of them from running in the election. Just that they could make their own nominations, so they each enjoy their powers. There's no conflict. And anyway, public nomination is not a mainstream view and is essential. Like what Apple Daily said, if we could not get it, let's just let the whole exercise collapse, instead of what the Democratic Party proposes, that of the 3-track proposal, even if 1 track is missing, is fine. Mr. Choi Yu-chai, I'm a consultant of the UGC, is said. Now, I represent over 100,000 members and university students. Last month, the Hong Kong government initiated the consultation. There's no room for discussion. In the document, it kept quoting Beijing officials as if these are the official the imperial decrees. But you look at the whole document, it's actually unconstitutional. Para 5.05 of the consultation document. It says here, it says that issues to be considered. How could the democratic procedures reflect the requirement of organizational nomination? Where is there in the basic law that says there must be organizational nomination? What is the legal basis? Wang Yokman asked 2 days ago. The CE was the 689 was going to answer that, and Wang Yongtat asked you, and then Raymond Tam agreed that yes, there's no organization nomination in the basic law. So you should actually withdraw the social exercise and start all over again, because you are taking the lead to be unconstitutional. We are asking Hong Kong to have universal suffrage, and then you start a consultation that's not constitutional. The government tells us that it's very likely that public nomination won't be accepted. But then public nomination is a way to counter selection at the whim of Beijing, and we want people to take part in the election. If you say that it's against the basic law, well, amend the basic law. What's wrong with that? Why can't the basic law be amended? If there are unreasonable provisions in the basic law standing in our way in our fight for universal suffrage, then we must amend the basic law. It is now a critical stage of constitutional reform. All of you here showed a political responsibility and historic mission. If you come up with phony universal suffrage that's against the will of the people of Hong Kong, you must bear in mind that you have to shoulder the political consequences, and it would be more than just Occupy Central. But unfortunately, for the majority of the democratic camp in this council, more conservative than university students, they don't even dare to stand firm on this bottom line of public nomination. While the council may back up, but Hong Kong people must not. We must bear in mind that there must be public nomination. There must be nomination directly by the public, and then we have 1 person, 1 vote. Only that is acceptable universal suffrage. Now, I'd like to quote from President Tsai Ying-pei, president of the Peking University. Now, students should focus on studies. They shouldn't have to come out to fight for universal suffrage, but for the good of Hong Kong, for our next generation, in the face of the Hong Kong and Communist Party ruling power, in the face of these cowardly legislative members, we have to stand up. We have to insist on public nomination, and the Hong Kong must always come first. Next, Ms. Cho Ching Ong Lai. I represent the Hong Kong Federation of Railway Unions of the FTU. Of course, we want to have stability in Hong Kong. We want workers to have jobs. So we want to make 3 points. First, the nominating committee must follow the requirements of the Basic Law. Hong Kong is a special administrative region of the People's Republic of China. So our universal suffrage must be in line with the requirements of Article 45 of the Basic Law. That's why it's lawful and reasonable for the nominating committee to nominate candidates for this election. Now, public nomination is not spelled out in the basic law, so it's illegal. It should be disallowed. Now, there should be broadly representative nominating committee, and the members of the nominating committee are elected by the different sectors. So it's fair and it's lawful. The CE candidates have been screened by the nominating committee, so the abilities, the political platforms, and the legitimacy of CE candidates are therefore enhanced, and it will allow it easier for the public to make a choice. On the size of the nominating committee, it shouldn't be too large. It should be about 1,200 to 1,400. As for the CE candidates, there shouldn't be more than 3. That's the second point. Third point, the CE shouldn't have any political affiliation. In Hong Kong, we do not have a law on political parties. There is not a law on national security to regulate political parties. There are so many bodies calling themselves political parties, but you know they are just incorporated companies. There's no monitoring of the revenue and expenditure. The public know nothing about how they work. So that's why under the current system, we do not propose candidates with a political affiliation to be allowed to run in the CE election. Another point, for CE candidates, when they run for election, they should swear to pledge allegiance to the People's Republic of China. That's to show the respect for the country. Now, Professor Anthony Chen, now the Secretary for Transport and Housing, in 2006, in an article, he said that as we consider or discuss how we should achieve universal suffrage, we have to consider the different mindsets in Hong Kong and in China. Now, the CE election must have a nominating procedure that will put the minds of both Hong Kong and China, and Beijing at ease. So we need to have rational discussion within the framework of the basic law. Thank you. Next, Mr. Lau Chung Hoi. Good morning. Thank you. Well, on constitution, there are 2 points we have to bear in mind. First, it must be lawful. Hong Kong is a place that gives place to rule of law. The spirit of the rule of law is a core value of Hong Kong. Hong Kong enjoys stability and prosperity now. Hong Kong enjoys progress. It's all because we have a comprehensive legal system, a sound legal system. So the constitutional reform must be on that basis. It must be on the basis of the legal spirit. And the basis, of course, is then basic law. We have to comply with the basic law to ensure the long-term interests of the people of Hong Kong. Article 1 of the basic law says that Hong Kong is an inalienable part of the People's Republic of China. It's also an administrative region that enjoys a high degree of autonomy. The Hong Kong SAR is directly under the Central People's Government. So these 2 articles meant to say that for the head of the chief executive of the Hong Kong SAR, the Central People's Government has substantive power of appointment. Now, there are all sorts of proposals that have come up. Maybe it's not really constructive for the consultation. It was not in line with the democratic progress in Hong Kong. So for these outrageous proposals, they may not work. Now, in accordance with Article 45 of the Basic Law, there must be a broadly representative nominating committee, and then there will be universal suffrage. For the nominating committee, I believe there should be organizational nominations. The 4 sectors are representative of Hong Kong, and so people from different sectors are able to make their voice heard. Another point is that there must be reasonableness. Now, the CE must love Hong Kong and China is only reasonable. There's no need to debate it. That's the consensus of the community. For example, in the United States, they won't allow Hawaii to contradict United States. So again, China would also not accept Hong Kong contradicting it. Now, if the CE is not one who loves China and loves Hong Kong, he is not able to attend meetings in China, is unreasonable. There are some flawed arguments in the community that the democratic process in Hong Kong is moving at too slow a pace, but is it really the case? democratic progress in Hong Kong is actually relatively fast if you look at it objectively. If we could achieve universal suffrage in 2017, that means starting from the reunification, it would only take 20 years. And there are another flaw argument, that is, we had always referred to the international standards, but we must not just copy the international system, other systems mechanically. We have to have regard to the history and the actual situation in Hong Kong in coming up with their own constitutional system. Thank you. Next, Mr. Tam Wing Fan. Good morning. Well, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us to have universal suffrage for the CE election. The British government governed Hong Kong for more than a century. We never had a chance to vote for the chief executive by one person, one vote. Now we've been returned to the motherland in just 20 years, and we now have the chance. If I may respond to what Mr. Law Chen Hoi said, definitely this pace is a whole lot faster than when it was under British rule. When the CPG drafted the basic law, this is already spelled out in the basic law, so that shows the determination of the CPG to make that happen. Now, if we have an CE who is of the right caliber, so that he could rule Hong Kong, then I think it's fine to have selection. By selection, that means we will screen out people who want to paralyze the government, who challenge the CPG. That means we have to screen out people who would indiscriminately occupy Central and badmouth Hong Kong. Yes, we should screen out such people so that the CE could dedicate its effort to ruling Hong Kong properly. On the nominating committee, if I may make a suggestion, we should increase the number of nominating committee members evenly, because we want to make sure there is a balanced participation. We don't want to compromise with any party. Maybe the business sector could speak out more, or another sector could speak out more. Then we bias towards a particular sector. No, there should be even increase in the number of members, and there shouldn't be too many candidates. In 2012, there was the legislative election in the New Territories East and New Territories West. There were 10, 20 candidates. They were bickering over each other. Each candidate only had 1 minute or two to speak, because by the time they finished, it would have been an hour gone. Now the CE must explain his manifesto clearly. Definitely he could not do so in a forum where he only has 2 or 3 minutes to speak. So that's why we should limit the number of candidates. Now, if we have universal suffrage in Hong Kong, definitely we will be reference point for China. I hope we won't undermine this historic mission of one person, one vote for the CE election just because of minor differences. Mr. Chong Wen Ban. Now, I'm from the Hong Kong Institute of Education. For the 2017 CE election, the composition of the nominating committee, it should be in line with the basic law. Now there are now 4 sectors, but I propose we could include at the 5th factor formed by the elected district councillors. Why? Because for elected district councillors, they are elected by voters in each district, so they are representative of public views, and they are able to speak for grassroots. That's why if we have a sector formed by elected district councillors, it makes sense. And if they are involved in nominating CE candidates, it's just right. And then for each sector, there should be an increase correspondingly in the number of voters or members, so that with an expanded electorate base, then the CE candidates nominated could take care of the interests of all sectors of Hong Kong. And then for the elected CE, he must of course love Hong Kong and love China. Some say the CE needs not love Hong Kong or love China, but someone who doesn't love Hong Kong or love China, especially as a CE, there's no way he could govern effectively. Now, The basic law states clearly that the CE must be appointed by the CPG, and the CPG must pledge allegiance to the basic law and the Hong Kong SAR. So that means the powers of the CE are derived from the CPG. If the CE contradicts the CPG, how is he able to govern Hong Kong? There's no way, and there's no basis for his powers. And then the CE must deal with all issues like education issues, people's livelihood, social issues, housing issues, and the new arrivals issues, and so on. If the CE could not talk to China about issues in Hong Kong and China, how could he address this? How could they address these issues properly? How could they deal with the relations with CPG properly? Now, there was a survey. People were asked what they thought the CE performed well in, and they said that the CE was able to deal with the relations with China. Said that shows that people do think it's important that CE is able to effectively deal with CPG. That's why we need CE who loves China and Hong Kong. Only that would we have win-win in both China and Hong Kong, and only then with would he be able to govern Hong Kong. Next, Mr. Kerry Cheung. Now, Hong Kong people take pride in our rule of law. This is one of the core values of Hong Kong. The basic law is our constitution. So on CE election or legislative election, it must be done within a framework of this constitution. Otherwise, it's like we have no rules to go by. We've looked at the experience in other countries. If the government doesn't act in accordance with the constitution, that means it's unconstitutional, so there are no rules, and it will be ruled by people. Of course, we have to make progress in society. In terms of the Constitution and its articles, if there is consensus, then in a lawful and reasonable and legitimate manner, then we could make changes. But then we must not confuse the two issues. So the CE election must be within the framework of the basic law. And if there's need to make changes, that would be a separate issue. Thank you. So it's now time for questions by members. Who would like to ask questions, please? 4 so far. I'll give you the order.
I'll give each member 4 minutes. We need to finish by 11:40. Mr. Raymond Wong, N. Jiang, Yip Kin Yuen, Am Lelau. Mr. Raymond Wong. Mr. Kong Wah is now representing the administration. Of course, if the fact he's come here, he would need to face the criticism. But I don't think he has the say. Somebody talk about Article 45. In the electrical meeting, I asked Leung Chen-ying to answer the question. He couldn't give me an answer. Are you able to answer the question? You can't. Suddenly you come with the idea of organization nomination. All the people sitting here, many of you, with the exception of a few, belong to the pro-establishment camp. I will not scold these people who have come because they're here to give their views, but the views are all the same. I think can't answer the question as to why we should have organization nomination. Even if you talk about the rule of law, where does organizational nomination come from? You can't answer the question. That's the most crucial part of the Constitution paper. Even if I were in your position, I have to follow the law, I have to abide by the basic law. Where does organization nomination come from? That is why the Democratic camp and the three-track option, the most ridiculous part is that they want the nomination committee to endorse it, and then they recognize the nomination committee that they should be formed on the basis of the 4 sectors of the election committee and slightly make it more democratic. I think the Democratic camp go home. And they even asked the nomination committee to confirm that. Because you're not doing that, because you're against public nomination by political parties. So they even say that the nomination committee can have the right to confirm that they're even more conservative than you are. So you have no reason to be afraid. I think that the reform package definitely will be passed, and this is what the Democratic camp is like. I won't even talk about the conservative camp. Some of the young people who spoke, I mean really gave me cause to alarm. I thought I was in North Korea. I mean, for people in the 30s and 40s making comments like that, why don't you go to North Korea? The Kim dynasty has been ruling for so long, and later on Kim Il-sung's son will continue to rule North Korea. What you say is similar to what they say there. You talk about this, the People's Republic of China. Did you have a right to elect the government? I think priority should be given to Hong Kong's autonomy. The Basic Law states this very clearly. In 2004, the MPC interpreted the Basic Law, and they actually, stopped universal suffrage for 2008, and then the MCSC decision also, destroyed our hope for universal suffrage in 2012. Some people mentioned Taiwan. In the mid-1980s, the first opposition party was formed in 1986. It was illegal. In 1987, Chen Jing-kuo, lifted the martial law, and the Democratic Party came to power. Subsequently, they were defeated in elections. So how can you make the comparison? In Taiwan, they started the democratic process in the 80s. We did so also in the 1980s. In the 1990s, we had started to have functional constituencies, and only by 2020 we have a chance to form legislature by universal suffrage, and on the basis that there would be a CE to be returned on condition that there is screening. So how can you compare ourselves with those other countries? One lady talked about the United States. You talk about what things 200 years ago. Talk about steady and orderly progress. Why don't you go back to the Qing dynasty? Times have changed. Don't you realize that? Let's see whether Mr. Lau Kong-wah can answer the question. Perhaps he's smarter than Mr. Tam Shi-yun about the question about organization nomination. Ms. N. Jiang. I think Mr. Wong has used up all his time. That's fine. Although what he said didn't make sense, and he seems to be living a different age than us. But I like to say that I've heard some deputations commenting on organization nomination. Well, I'm also not happy with this, because the government has not clearly explained this concept. I think all of you should have a copy of the Basic Law. If you go to page 10 and Article 45, Article 45 states that there should be a nomination committee which is widely representative, and it will make nominations in accordance with democratic procedures. Many people are not very clear about this, because for a period of time people propose public nomination and other methods of nomination. And that's why last time the central authorities had a representative coming to Hong Kong, suggested that the nomination should be made by the nomination committee collectively, as if it were an organization. Mr. Wong, I don't think you should interrupt. It's not the Basic Law mentioned organization nomination. We're only talking about, the nomination committee collectively making a nomination. So I hope members will get the facts right. But I also have some questions for the Undersecretary. Many people now say or ask whether we get a public nomination. I've also heard the Bureau explaining that whether or not the public nomination is not feasible. And secondly, I'd like to ask, in which country they do not have primary election? Some people call this screening. Are you aware of the election in any country where they don't have primary election? Thirdly, this is to reassure our younger generation. Let's say in 2017 we approve the reform package and we proceed with universal suffrage, and the outcome of the election may not be satisfactory to some people. So in future, will you conduct another review? I think we will let the Undersecretary give a global response later on. Ms. Ip Kin Yuen. I'd like to thank all the deputations for coming to give us their views, and it's a good thing that people with different views can come and express their opinion to us. Several deputations suggested that the number of CE candidates, did they touch on this subject on the number of candidates? My question is, why do we need to set a limit on the number of candidates? And secondly, if we were to set such a limit, how can we do it? Why and how? Mr. Tam Wing Fun said that for in the electoral election, during the course of the election, during electoral forum, each candidate only have a few minutes, and then as a result, the election was not really done very well, and that's why the CE takes longer time to explain the decision. Of course, we hope that there will be we're going to have a mature election. But if you use electoral as an example, if all the electoral candidates have this problem, then should we set a limit on the number of electoral members? And if so, how are we going to limit the number? If you could answer this question, then it can also help us. It can shed some light on how we can, answer the question on how many CE candidates there should be. So why should we set a limit, and how can we do that? Would anyone like to answer the question? Yes. Mr. Comer. Yes. I think when I spoke, you were not in the room. I also said that I suggested we should set a limit on the number of candidates. If there are too many candidates, I think a candidate should have the support of the electorate. If so many people are contesting election, then each candidate will get a smaller number of votes, and the CE elected will only win a small number of votes, and hence the extent of his legitimacy will be smaller. I think you've answered the question why, but that question can be answered. So long as we require that candidate to win a majority vote through 2 rounds of election or voting, then the problem can be resolved. So is it a legal requirement according to basic law that we should narrow down the number of candidates, or is it that we all prefer a smaller number of candidates? If it's a letter, we still need to answer the second question: how are we going to limit the number? Would anyone like to respond to that question? If not, I can say that the nomination committee can set that limit. We have to go through the nomination committee, and I don't think there should be a problem. But I would still like to listen to the deputation. I see one hand up. No? Emily Lau. That perhaps is the opinion of the chairman and the DAB. We certainly would be against that. I'd like to follow up on Mr. Ip Kin Yun's question, and I also like to thank the deputations for coming. I think in this session, many people are in favor of limiting the number of candidates, with the exception of Mr. Low Kam Weng, Mr. Wong Kun Lam, Mr. Wong Ting Chong, and Mr. Tam Wing Kwan, and Madam Ching On Lai from the Federation of Trade Unions. The question is, how do you operate that in practice? We all along we've insisted that we are against the suggestion. We think people with different political opinions should, should have the right to contest election. You talk about the need to be patriotic and so on. I think the question is how do you operate that, and the chairman already gave you the tips. That is, a nomination committee can do it. So you talk about the need to be fair and just. The person represent in favor of functional constituencies. He said that his sector should be given the right to vote. Several million people would also want the election to be fair and just. So how can you come on with a system that would be acceptable to everyone? You may have your idea, but how do you put it into law? How are you going to enforce it? How do you direct the nomination committee to screen out certain people and only end up with only 2 or 3 candidates? How can we do it? Very simple. Chairman, we'll leave it to the 12,000 people in the nomination committee to decide. Chairman, I'm not asking you. I think that the submissions will have to think about it. Oh, yeah, Mr. Chair Long. Chairman. According to Chapter 4 of the Basic Law, other than Article 45, there is also Article 43, 44. The CE represents the Hong Kong SAR, according to Article 43. And then the Chief Executive shall be accountable to the Central People's Government and the Hong Kong SAR in accordance with the provision of this law. I already said earlier that this election does not just involve the people of Hong Kong. It's stated in basic law. If you don't get the endorsement of the CPG, then it wouldn't work. Whether or not there should be any screening. The basic law has certain stipulations. In Article 44, it is said that the CE shall be a Chinese citizen not less than 40 years of age, who is a permanent resident of the region with no right of abode in any foreign country. Chairman, I think we've read all that already and has ordinarily resided in Hong Kong for a continued period of no less than 20 years. Chairman, please explain how we are going to enforce that. We don't have time. There will be plenty of opportunities. We still have a few more months. How can we have a smaller number of candidates? One method is like what Mr. Tam suggested. The nomination committee can set the limit, or if the records of the behavior and track record of these candidates, if they contest election, they are against the CBG, they're saying things that would damage Hong Kong's interest, the nomination committee can make reference of that. You can't allow anybody to contest the election. Ms. Raymond Wong said that we should go against the CBG. Would you have the home visit permit? Oh, anyone who doesn't have the home visit permit cannot contest election. Yes, of course. If you don't have that permit, you wouldn't be able to report for duties in Beijing. We have a little time left, and I'd like to invite Mr. Lau Kong-wah, the Under Secretary, to respond globally. Again, I'd like to thank all the deputations for coming today. Overall speaking, I heard that all of you have great expectations of being able to elect a CE in 2017 on a one-man, one-vote basis, and you don't want the proposal for political reform to not to be supported. We hope that our discussion can be rational and pragmatic. Another point is that all of you attach a lot of importance to the fact that the Constitution must be, within the law, in compliance with the law, and that is, it must comply with the basic law and the MPCAC decision. And the ASIG is also proceeding with the Constitution on that basis. Of course, some of you have put forward various suggestions regarding the composition of the nomination committee, and some of you mentioned that in future, after we've elected the CE, if the CPG refuses to make the substantive nomination, what's going to happen? In 5.07 of the Constitution paper, we've also raised this issue. It's a real issue to address. So what are we going to do in that scenario. I would like the public to give us the views. Someone talk about the question of politics and law. We've talked about where the legal basis is. But politically, if we talk about the constitutional arrangement, and this is an important political process. I already mentioned the 5 steps earlier. Regarding the cost of nomination and election, how should the public make the decision? How should the nomination committee make the political decision? Of course, they will make the decision at the time. Mr. Chow Kok Keung said that in the past he had not been involved in politics. He's not come to a forum like this before, and I think that's the same for many people in Hong Kong. But this time, the proposed political reform involves the welfare of each and every one in Hong Kong. It is your expectation that there should be few arguments and more discussion, and we agree. And we hope that when you go back, you will talk to your friends, the people who have been silent so far. I hope you would talk to them and tell us and express the views. Ms. Chen Yin Hong also comment on the question nomination committee and also the point about organizational nomination as mentioned by Mr. Raymond Wong. I'm happy to hear Mr. Raymond Wong going back to the basic law, and he is it's very important that our discussion is based on the basic law. Why didn't you wait until the Secretary says, I need to rectify that I'm not going back to the return to basic law. I was talking about organization nomination on the basis of the basic law. Don't distort what I've said. Point of order. How can he call out the nickname of the Undersecretary? Well, you should be grateful I don't call you by another nickname. Undersecretary. Chairman, I'd like to go back to the basic law.
Yes.
Article 45 of the Basic Law provides guidance to the whole consultation exercise and the system to be implemented in the future. So I think that should form a basis for our discussion. Mr. Li Fei visited Hong Kong earlier, and he mentioned about organizational nomination. Yes, that was not written in the Basic Law, but this was not a legal term as such, but rather there was individual votes in the election committee, and then for the nominating committee there would be organizational nomination. So when you look at Article 45, it does say the nominating committee will make the nominations. According to Annex 1 of the Basic Law, it says that the nominating committee, not less than 150 members of the nominating committee can make nominations for the CE. So that's what is written. The nominating committee has 2 roles. First is nomination, i.e., 150 members can make a nomination, and at the same time, it is also playing the role of election, and that's the present arrangement. Now, for the future, according to the Basic Law, the nominating committee has only one role, and that is nomination. It cannot elect. So Article 45 says clearly that the nominating committee shall make nominations, and then the CE is going to be returned by universal suffrage. So that's the difference. So in other words, the word organizational nomination is not written down, but then that makes it very clear that it is different from individual nomination. Lastly, I would like to respond to Dr. N. Zhang's point about civic nomination. What's the practice in different countries? Different countries have different practices. Now, when we look at Hong Kong, we should follow the law, and we have a legal basis. And we must build the system on our existing legal basis. We did have an election committee, and it is evolving. So if you ask me about what is going to happen in the future, the ultimate aim is to return the CE by one man, one vote in 2017, and that was raised in the MPCSC in 2007. A certain number that was also raised by the MPCSC. If you look through the decisions of MPCSC, and it includes the point made about electing CE through universal suffrage. In that same decision, it also states that a certain number of candidates should be nominated for universal suffrage. That was clearly stated. So in the public consultation today, we hope to hear more views, say on the composition of the nominating committee and other issues. We are happy to listen to views. Well, we've overrun on our time for the present session, so I would like to thank the deputations and individuals for giving your views. The session 3 will start at 11:50.